Welcome to another episode of Just Me podcast. And today we're joined by the wonderful Lorin LaFave. Lorin, for people who don't know about your story, can you tell us why you've become the person that you have?
I kind of gained a new career that I never would have wanted, which is campaigning to help children keep safer online. And that is because my son Breck, at only 14 years old, was groomed online whilst he was gaming with friends from school. And a predator infiltrated their social media apps, their gaming apps, and befriended the boys, pretending to be a good guy, and taught them a lot, mentored them, built their, fake friendship through their shared interest of computing and gaming. And he was grooming the boys, bullying some of them and grooming some of them. And to be honest, the police said that he was grooming boys all over the UK as well as the US. So he, well, it was prolific, really. But what was crazy is that he was young. And so when I tried to warn my son that I thought he was being groomed, because this predator said he was only 17 years old, the boys didn't consider that to be a danger, being close to their age. Breck was 14, but some of the other gamers were 13, 14, 15, 16. So they were all around, mixture of teenage ages, but they didn't consider it a predatory age. So at Eve, after, I did everything I could as a parent to try to protect him, from calling the police and reporting to talking to other parents, having an intervention meeting, asking for help at schools, trying to talk to Breck, but I couldn't get through because he was happy with his situation. Mm-hmm. And eventually Breck was lured to the predator's flat, where he was sexually and sadistically murdered. And, as a parent, that is just the worst thing that could ever happen, because you can't fix it. And I remember, and even now sometimes, but especially in those early days, I'd be in the shower and it was where I could cry and people wouldn't hear, because you can't cry in front of everybody all the time. And I would say, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. Because once it happens, there's nothing you can do. And, if it's a bad relationship, you change it. If it's a bad job, you change it. If you don't like where you live, you move. But in this situation, there's nothing you can do to fix what happened. So during the police investigation, I found out so much about, what was happening behind the scenes. And the predator had sent Breck a brand new smartphone so that they could communicate in secret. He was gifting the boys software and games, and really turning the boys against parents, against school, against education, against religion, against government, against anything established. And it was a control power play. He was literally manipulating them and brainwashing them, because my son Breck was a clever boy. He was, did well at school. He had friends. He had people who loved him, but maybe his vulnerability was that he didn't yet see the evil in the world, and didn't believe that, that these sorts of things happened. And I think especially teenagers don't think it'll ever happen to them. And, since then, since I set up the Breck Foundation, a charity that could help educate and empower young people to keep safer online. And originally, I just constantly toured from school to school, from county to county, police forces, conferences, health professionals, just using Breck's story, with any age group, adjusting it for the audience, and just trying to get that word out there. But eventually I realized, wow, I'm never going to reach everyone. And I also thought that I would finish at some point, but I didn't think about the fact that there's new babies being born who will one day go online. There's new teachers, there's new parents, there's new police. So it's a constant battle to try to educate everyone and to recognize the signs of grooming and to be safer online. And so I actually got some Breck ambassadors to help with the charity. And it was young people using their young voices, speaking the right lingo. And that was one of my favorite moments, because I had like a little army of people who could help me, and they were living it themselves, so they could probably explain it and teach about it even better, in their own words. And the charity grew, and I then sort of moved into campaigning because I got together with Baroness Beban Kidron, and then with her Five Rights group, and then we got together with bereaved families for online safety. We created that group because there were just more and more of us, and since then the group has grown, and it's crazy how more parents keep joining. And we don't want new members. We don't want anybody else to need to join this group. And unfortunately, the issues have changed, and it's ramped up. There's now more ways in which children are losing their lives than ever. There's new things that happen, new challenges, new ways of predators to reach children, and something huge has to change. It's just the trajectory. It just has to change. It can't continue. And I always say, with the bereaved families, we have the worst case scenario, but what about the millions of children that are being harmed, either with mental health, with distraction, with influencers who are negative towards that, towards their thinking and their values, bad information, harmful content, violent content, pornography. I mean, you could go on forever with things of harm that could come towards children, depending on what the algorithms are pushing towards them, and depending on what they click on and who they run into. So I think it's not just the poor children who died and lost their lives. It's also about the children who deserve a childhood, who should be growing and developing in a happy, healthy, safe way, instead of having this pressure to keep up with their their friends online, and being liked and being shared and being known, and the unrealistic expectations that they're setting themselves up against. So I don't think that there's any child who's going to escape
No.
something coming their way that is is unhealthy for them or unsafe for them. Every child will be getting something coming their way that really isn't in their best interest, and their parents wouldn't wish for them.
But it's so hard, isn't it? Like they said earlier, that maybe it was that Breck just didn't recognise that there is that amount of evil in the world. And the thing is that when they do go on to gaming, doing whatever they're doing online, they do it with that innocence, don't they? But as you say, there's a backdrop there of people trying to outsmart them, or befriend them, or whatever. So how do you teach those lessons in a way that don't become so fearful that we just create a even bigger theatre of fear?
Yeah, I think that's hard. And I do think that children have more anxiety now because there's more
Yeah,
information out there.
yeah,
They've got too much. It's just too much for their brains to take in. It's hard enough for adults to take all of what's happening in the world in. It's not that I think children should be isolated, but I think there has to be a good balance. And so for, Breck and his friends, they would have had whatever the minimal sort of um, online safety lessons within their school. However, I don't think sometimes people teach about these issues in the most engaging way. If
okay,
it's a teacher that teaches some other subject, and then all of a sudden they're talking about sort of things that are close to home, personal to the kids, I just think that they might shut off. I think that they might say, oh, here's the teacher trying to teach us stuff. I know you've been telling us this since we were young. And it really is so important that those lessons adapt and change. And I know for a fact that Breck and his
mm,
friends were getting lessons that were the same ones that they were getting back when they were in primary school. Don't talk to strangers, don't give away your information, stay private. Of course, all of those messages are really important, but when they're teenagers, they're not actually going to follow the same lessons that you taught them at primary school. And so it needs to adapt, it needs to be more realistic. Unless, of course, you can get them to stay private. I mean, that's wonderful, but most teens will talk about the weather. Oh, what's your weather like? Oh, I live on the coast and it's sunny today. Where'd you go to the football match? Oh, I took the train to, London.
Yeah.
I think they start to have real conversations about their lives, and they will share information. So it's more important to try to teach them that everyone online is a stranger, and that's not saying that everyone is bad. It's saying that we just don't know. And I think rather than making everything taboo, it has to be more about critical thinking and thinking through,
Brilliant.
whether or not someone is genuine or whether or not something is safe. And I think using real life stories really helps. And Brex is just one story of being groomed. And, there's lots of children that have been sexually exploited, the children that are pushed suicide and self harm content. It's almost like you have to put a real picture, a real life up there and say, this
Mm.
is what happened. And for me with teenagers, I could see, especially the boy gamers, would sometimes roll their eyes. And this is why I loved presenting face to face,
Yeah.
and it was much harder online because I'd see their face and I go, I get you. You don't think this will happen to you. I'm sure it won't. But what if you see any of this happening to your siblings or a cousin or a friend at school? That's why I'm here, because I want you all to know what to do about it. So, in a way, I
Brilliant.
tried to teach it in like a back entrance or a side entrance, not to lecture them with my finger out shaking, but more like, what would you do if you saw this happening in your friendship group? Or, maybe you'll need this someday. If you're crazy enough to have your own kids, you'll know what to watch out for. I guess I tried to make it light and almost jokey at times so that it wasn't so tense. And then
Yeah.
we'd have serious points. And there were times where kids would cry, and there were times where kids would give me hugs after my lessons. But it was about engaging them and about making them think about their own behaviors and sort of picture themselves and their friends in situations and what would they have done, and teaching them to be upstanders rather than bystanders. And I think it's just really talking in almost an honest way. And I have in the past, I had parents that say, oh, we don't want our children to have these lessons, they'll be scary. And my thing is well, I'd rather, oh, they said they'd have nightmares. I'd say I'd rather have my kid have a nightmare than be dead. But that's how I look at it. I You have to do it in an age appropriate way, of course. And so when I'd speak to the little ones, I'd say Breck got hurt. When I'd speak to the older ones, I'd use swear words and be more honest. So it's about engaging them at the right level. And I think parents at home have a really tricky time trying to get through to their children about everything. And literally, was speaking with someone from our group today who they knew their daughter was struggling a bit, but they just didn't realize to what level. And I think that's what's so hard is we all walk around worried about children. Sometimes it's hard to get through, but I do think real stories and asking questions and even then it's still so hard. So I think it's just, I'm hoping, that the government sees how dangerous social media is, and we can raise the age of social media so that we just give kids more time to grow and develop.
And if you could go back, what would you do differently? Because it's difficult, isn't it? You've got a 13, 14-year old, son, daughter.
Hmm.
They kind of know it, don't they? They kind of, as you say, raise the eyes or whatever. But what could you have done, do you think, differently?
Well, there are a lot of things I could have done differently now that I know more about it.
Mm.
I think, first of all, I think when I tried to talk to Breck, I kind of skirted around the issues.
Okay.
Like I wasn't 100% direct. I didn't, I didn't I did try to talk up to Breck about grooming. We even have a recording where the predator asked Breck to secretly record the parent meeting. And when we said, we think you're being groomed, and Breck said, I think it's a harsh term to say grooming. And we did say, well, it is. And that's why we're worried. We're worried, Breck, because it is a harsh term and it is a worry. So we did talk to him directly, but I think if I could do it differently, I would search out real life stories and real life scenarios rather than, I think young people think that parents are just old fashioned and out of date, and the predator fed into that with, they will, if they're grooming the kids. your parents don't understand. They don't get you like I get you. They don't understand you like I understand you, and really turn you into the bad guy. So I think definitely more upfront talking and asking more questions. What I didn't do, which I wish I had, is go directly to the head of the school. I
Mm.
asked people that worked within the school setting for help and Breck's tutor. But I should have made an appointment and just like kind of pounded on the table and said, I know the grooming's not happening at home, but can you put me in contact with who can help me? But because he wasn't presenting as having
Mm.
issues at school, when I tried to talk to them about it, they would just reassure me that his grades were good. After the fact, they did note that he had engaged less in his lessons. They did realize that when he first was in their class, he was raising his hand, he was answering questions, and the more the grooming process took over, he was pulling back and being pulled away from everything from
Wow.
by the groomer. And so I just think it's about education again. Because if you have a parent who comes and says, I'm worried about my child, you need to give them the time and the resources for that, child, for that parent to figure out where to go for the next step of help. Everybody just said to me, oh, well, all teenagers are online too often. They all talk to strangers. They're all game too much. That's just the norm. And, even though I was using the word grooming, people didn't believe me and didn't know what advice to give. The other thing that went wrong was when I phoned the police. 3 times I said Breck was being groomed. I gave the name of the groomer. I gave the name of the predator's alias, which I'm like, why does a teenager have an alias? I told them where he had lived, where he said he lived, how old he said he was, how old I thought he was. And unfortunately, the 2 police people that dealt with my case, which just kills me really, they didn't know about grooming. They didn't understand. They didn't care. They didn't ask questions. They didn't follow up. They didn't look in the records, even though 3 times they said they would. And they closed the case that night without telling me. And I thought there was an investigation happening.
Wow.
And had they looked at those records, they would have found that that predator was known to the police. He had groomed other boys. From 11 years old, he was grooming other boys. He had hacked into a school computer to intimidate a victim, and that victim he had sexually assaulted, raped, and he also had in his computer indecent images of young boys. But all of that was in the police records. So if I could do something differently, I'd call the police every damn day and say, did you get an answer? Did you get an answer? Did you get an answer? I was waiting for them to give me their results. But we have to remember, same with, medical issues. If things fall through the cracks, then there's a problem. I didn't know. So I would recommend, if you don't get the answers that you want and need, keep pushing. And I have parents all the time that say they're struggling with police in their, in their investigations because police are overworked and under resourced and they're not always that savvy with technical issues. Keep pushing. You have to keep pushing it's a gut feeling. And I had a gut feeling. I knew I just couldn't get the help. And then once we forbade Breck and the boys from speaking with this predator or gaming with them, which was what the parents, we all decided to do because we offered to meet him. He wouldn't meet up with us because apparently he didn't like parents. And so when we forbade it, it made it worse because it then went underground.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the other thing is, taking away and forbidding. If we decide to do that, we need to recognize that it might push in a different direction. So we need to be, almost more hyper aware. I think, the predator just fed into that. He was like, oh, great, because now I can get Breck to be more secretive and we can still meet up when she's not around. I don't know how I missed them together after I forbade them because I could hear what Breck was doing, but I think the predator was very careful to make sure that I thought he was out of the picture.
Wow.
So I don't know. I think, it's about the talking, the education, and just understanding the signs of if a child's anxious, hiding something, not talking, behavior changes, and it's hard. How do you differentiate between those things and
Mm.
just regular teenage
Mm.
changing behavior? And I really struggled with that. I just didn't know if it was a hormonal thing that Breck was pulling away. But from the start, I felt like the predator was in control of this gaming group. And I didn't want some stranger, you know, running the gaming group without me knowing who it was. And for all that I tried to do, I still failed. And I think well, it's hard. It's hard.
So, if you are a young person and you're listening to this, and you do think that somebody maybe is grooming you, controlling you, and maybe they're not in a great, I don't know, family situation, what can they do?
Well, the problem is when people are being groomed, they almost don't recognize it
Okay.
because it can kind of feel good. And then once you're hooked, you're sort of hooked in a controlling way. And I think that's what I always used to really try to say to people. If you think your friend is being groomed and they're stopping being friends with you, but yet you were friends before, think about, do they realize what they're doing?
Mm.
Are they being pulled away by some outside influence?
Mm.
So, I mean, of course, if someone's feeling bullied or groomed or exploited, we have to remind, young people that even if you feel like maybe you have done something wrong, there's nothing that we can't fix if you
Brilliant.
go to your grown up.
Brilliant.
So, in the case of the children that will accidentally send, possibly a naked picture, the problem is some schools teach that if you do that, your life is over, it'll never go away, and you'll be in big trouble.
Mm.
And some of that, yeah, maybe it won't go away, but does it really matter that much at the end of the day? I mean, of course, the first, the first recommendation is do not send it in the
Yeah.
first place. But so many children have been sexually exploited once they accidentally send that picture, and then people want money and they think their life is over, and it's not. If this is a gang or a blackmailer, who cares? Our lives are not worth losing over some criminal trying to gain money off of us. So again, that's almost straight talk. It's almost
Mm.
straight talk saying to young people, don't send these pictures because who knows who will end up with them. We all break up with people in our lives. We don't stick with one person forever unless you're extremely lucky. So do you really want this naked picture in the hands of someone that you might split up with next month? That's the first step. Second step, if someone does share it or threaten to share it, talk to someone, your grown up, the police, your teacher, straight away. Talk to someone about it. If it does get shared again, that needs to be reported. It's illegal
Mm.
to share, images of children, sexual images of children, and then if they're threatening for wanting money or threatening to show the pictures to someone else, that is a crime. And I think we need to remember that even though we shouldn't have sent the picture in the first place, asking for money for something like that is a crime. And I guess it's just like the amount of children that have lost their lives, mostly I'd say boys who thought they were talking to a girl. Turns out they were talking to some gang member somewhere. And they think their life's over because their parents and all their friends and teachers will see their penis somewhere. Who cares? Don't do it in the first place. But if it happens, it's not worth taking your life for. There's nothing that can't be fixed over time other than
But,
taking a life. You can't fix that, but you can fix other problems.
but it's so difficult, isn't it, when you are a teenager? It just feels that that is everything, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
that's what consumes you, it overwhelms you, and you can't see a way out. We can, because we can connect the dots looking backwards, but
Yeah.
for them, it's just so hard.
I think that's the thing is some of it is learning, when you make a mistake, you learn
Yeah.
what the consequences are. And I guess it depends what size mistakes happen.
Yes.
And if it's too much to handle, then people don't make good choices.
Yeah.
I still think it comes down to talking about real life stories and finding the names of children, maybe sitting on the, computer together and say, we heard this happened at someone else's school. Let's look how it happened so we can make sure that it doesn't happen in our family. And then you do it for 20 minutes or a half an hour, and then you have some popcorn or ice cream and hug. I mean, I don't know. That's, you can't dwell on it because you would stress the children, the kids out. But you have to present it as, I want to talk about it, even though it's uncomfortable because I love you. And not everyone has those kind of relationships, though. And I get that. I actually do talk to a lot more, and I did talk to my kids more than some people do. But I didn't teach about the signs of grooming, and the kids didn't learn them in school. And so I think it's just it's too much that they're getting too soon online, and I think that's why we need to just give them that little bit more time for their brains and their critical thinking skills to develop. Because yeah, it's all fun and games until someone tries to exploit or use or hurt, and then they don't know how to cope with it. So I just think we need to bring children's childhood back. Let's
Brilliant.
have more time to play, to exercise, to read, to draw, to music and arts, and rather than just handing them, especially when you see now, oh my gosh, parents giving children devices so young. They have their whole life to be stuck on a device, and all the research that came out just recently from the medical colleges, these are not good things for children to be stuck on for hours on end. It's Devices are not a babysitter. There's I
Yeah.
love when I see families at a restaurant with books and crayons and pencils, and they're drawing and they're laughing and they're talking together. It brings me such joy. And conversely, when I see kids just stuck on a device like a robot, I think, what's happening to their brain? They're just staring at something. It's just being fed to them. They're not they're not thinking for themselves. They're not aware of their surroundings. I think we have to be careful not to go the easy way and just show,
Yes.
especially even little ones. That they should be touching and playing and with their toys, tactile, not staring at screens. And I think it's really important. And even teaching etiquette on phones, and
Brilliant.
just not when people talk so loudly on their devices and play their music in public places, when it's like, wait a minute, how do you know all 20 of us in this train carriage
Yeah.
want to be listening to what you want to listen to? I mean, that's just it's insulting. It's We all have different interests, and
Mm.
I think so. There's a lot there's a lot that we need to remember and learn about devices, and they're so helpful and so necessary. But I think we also need to use them with care and with respect.
Brilliant. And what gives you hope? I mean, as you say, you can't undo what was done, but what gives you hope with the parent group that you've got, with the foundation that you've got?
Well, I can't tell you how many parents have thanked me and the foundation and our speakers for just highlighting the issues, because a lot of people don't even think about it. It's not on their radar, grooming or exploitation, or children being pushed self-harm or
Mm.
suicide through the aggressive algorithms and the addictive features. I mean, I don't know that every parent knows about the addictive features, or even, we need to teach children about the addictive features. Say, guess why you want to stay on your favorite apps. It's not just because they're your favorites. It's because those features are built into these platforms to hook you. We need to teach them. We need to teach them why they don't want to put their game down or their device away.
Mm.
And I think it's just a constant learning. You know, it's a constant learning situation. You can't just teach it and be done. It
Yeah.
evolves. It changes. There's new good information, and there's new harmful things coming towards our children. So I think it's really about having a balance and having boundaries and rites of passage. Children should not be getting a smartphone when they don't need one. It's putting the world and a whole computer and every bit of internet right into their hands. And so some, families are now wanting to go back to what, the old brick phones that didn't have internet. But, you know, it's hard. It's hard because we want to know where our kids are every minute. I get that. Maybe we need to put an Apple tag on them instead, instead of having them have a phone. We'll just stick it on them, and then we can see where they are. But I think we don't need to put the devices in children's hands as early as we are. Let them be children. Let them have their childhood.
Wow.
And my sort of motto in my head is bring back childhood. Let's go retro. And I'm not trying to be old fashioned. I'm just trying to be healthy. It's healthier and it's safer. And in terms of, giving children phones because we want to get a hold of them, well, we should be maybe interacting more with the parents. You drop them off at the parents' house or they ride their bike to the parents' house and you make sure that they arrive, and rather than having them, have their device with them all the time. I think it's just thinking things through and maybe working within parent groups to come up with different plans, because it is hard if your child is the only one that doesn't have the device. And it's about working together and coming up with a plan that works within your community, and giving children the rite of passage. Wait until they're actually the correct age. Don't let them lie about their age on social media. I'm hoping that the social media age will be raised to 16 because it, gives them more time to grow and develop. But also, we need more strict age verifications. Otherwise, that will never work. And I want age verifications anyway because it breaks my heart to think of an 8-year-old pretending to be 13 while there's a 20-something-year-old pretending to be, 15, and they think they're the same age, and they're not. So we wouldn't let our children pretend to be a teenager and send them into a club or a park or a stranger's house, and yet essentially that's what we have, what lots of people are doing.
And if you could describe yourself with one word, what would it be?
Brave.
And is there anything else that you'd like people to know on your behalf or on Breck's behalf?
I guess as hard as we work as campaigners and bereaved parents and other people, who are helpful within the safeguarding sphere, I really want parents and regular people, parents, to help rise up and say, we want a better life for our kids.
Wow.
You can never return to, if we happen to have idyllic childhood days, you can't return to that because time moves on. But we can have a better version of that than what we have now.
Wow.
There's plenty of family activities and there's plenty of ways children can learn and grow. We don't need the devices constantly. And I think some parents worry, well, if I don't do it, my kids will be behind in tech. But to be honest, we're fed so much that if the kids aren't techie, they're not going to be techie by having their device in their hand every minute because it's all fed to them. And if they are techie, like in Breck's case, they will study technology, they'll explore technology, and they'll enjoy it anyway. I don't think it's we can still learn it when we're past 5 years old. We don't have to teach our kids, oh, it's so fun when my kids know how to use my phone. It's like, oh my God, yes, they're clever, but do you really, want your child to have that life already? So I think it's thinking through, and in teen years, it's hard enough, parenting teenagers, but when you give away all of parental control, it's going to be even harder. And I think by setting up boundaries and having, healthy discussions, hopefully the teen years will be not as painful as they can be. I struggled with my triplets even after Breck died, and my children had a lot, 2 or 3 especially, 2 out of 3 of the triplets we're harmed quite a bit through social media.
Okay.
And, you know, I say that out loud and I kind of think, well, why didn't I take it away from them then? But that's why I want government to help. And it's not because I want to be micromanaged or, you know, big brother, but it's because now we're at the point, if you have a few parents who decide to do a healthy thing, they're going to be the odd ones out, and it's going to make it hard on the children. So I just think, from a health benefit, from a safety benefit, if we put all children on an equal footing, same with the idea of phone-free schools. You know, if we just take away the phones from children at school, every child gets the same opportunity for engaging, for socializing, and for enjoying their school day. But if you have a few that get to have it, you know, it's like it just makes others want it as well. So I think setting up a healthy atmosphere, and it's, if you think about it, we have age restrictions on when we can vote, when we can drink, when we can smoke, when we can drive. Why would this be any different? You know, this is putting the world into their hands. Why wouldn't we want a better age for them to be able to start having so much at their fingertips? It's too much too soon.
Brilliant. Lorin, thank you. Breck, thank you. Life. Thank you very much. Really. Thank you.
You're welcome. Best to everyone.